All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Me here, talking real music in real time for a few real people just like you and just like me. All right, before we get going here, it is Sunstorm, Brothers in Arms, courtesy of Frontiers Music. I got the t-shirt, and I also have the CD. And this is definitely going to be in my top 10, maybe for the year, top 20, top 10. It's going to be tough picking these CDs, which ones I actually like the best, because there was actually a lot of really good melodic rock. By the way, this band is a real band. For all of the nationally syndicated, highfalutin, high budget commentators that are on, like, say, Sirius XM or something like that, this is a band you should reach out to because they're real. They put out really good music. Ronnie Romero, a lot of people really like him. He's the lead singer. Alessandro Del Vecchio, is he overexposed? Yeah, he is. But he's still pretty good. He's still very good on this project, and he's very good on many projects. It's actually incredible how much music he writes and produces, and he's like the guy, he's like Atlas. He's holding melodic rock on his shoulders. Anyway, Sunstorm, really good stuff. Also, Steve Perry. Why am I talking about Steve Perry? You'll find out. Here is his album, Street Talk. This is the extended version of the album. Legacy Music put this out via Columbia Records. Extra bonus tracks, remastered. Steve Perry's best work outside of Journey right here. The first solo album, the album that began to fracture the stone or crack the stone. And, I looked up that term. And if you know anything about the history of Journey, during the VH1 documentary, Steve Perry says, don't fracture the band. This is toward the end of the documentary, where Steve finds out that the band is looking for other singers to replace him because Steve refuses to get the surgery and go on tour. Yeah. So that was the story anyway. There's been all kinds of conspiracy theories. And again, I'm going to start selling tinfoil hats because apparently, this is what I do. Okay. I speculate on things, and sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. But we're all here to, kind of learn from certain perspectives, and I'm trying to present my perspective here. And so, yeah, I do get details wrong, and sometimes I'm not right about every theory I have. But I guess, this is Christmas Eve, and we've seen Journey melt down completely the last couple of days. And I'm now starting to flip over to, I don't know if this band is going to tour next year, even though they've sold a boatload of tickets. And maybe at some point, all of the drama is going to hurt their ticket sales, but it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, Steve Perry infamously said in this video, hey guys, don't crack the stone. Now, here's my theory. Did Steve Perry in that moment, without even knowing it, put a curse on Journey the way he said that? All right. Now, for some people who don't believe in this stuff, you don't buy into the whole spiritual, universe, and you just think that this is all kind of weird that I'm even bringing this up again. This is just for entertainment value for the most part. But think of all of the things that have happened to Journey since Steve Perry said, don't crack the stone, don't fracture the band. He wanted these guys to just stop. That was what he wanted. He wanted them, look, if you're not going to go on without me, right, then you shouldn't go on at all. And I'm going to prevent you from going out there. That was Steve Perry. That was his agenda. And, he could have gone on tour with the band. He did decide to get the surgery after they had already hired Steve Augeri, from what I understand. But look what happens to the band after Steve Perry says don't fracture the stone. Their first album, which is Arrival, doesn't do very well. Steve Augeri, and this isn't his fault, Steve Augeri does a great job. The album is well produced. It sounds like a Journey record, but Steve Perry is gone. I know for a fact that during that tour, many objects were thrown at Steve Augeri while he was on stage because people were still wondering about Steve Perry. Where's Steve? And Steve Augeri took the brunt of that, and I think he took a few vegetables to the face. I mean, this was not a pretty situation. Steve Perry had and still has an incredible, loyal following. So anyway, you know, Arrival doesn't arrive with the kind of impact that the record label had hoped. So the record label says bye-bye. They drop Journey from the label. So Journey has to find another record label, and they do, and they record another album called Generations. And oddly, everybody sings on this record. Ross Valory sings on Generations, which I'm not sure was a great idea. Needless to say, the album is on a record label called Sanctuary. Sanctuary ends up going belly up not too long after they signed Journey. Journey is again without a record label. They've got another record that isn't selling. And if you go on certain websites, they're going to tell you that Generations was their absolutely worst album. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but you can make that argument when you've got Neil Schon, Ross Valory, and Jonathan Cain handling vocals. Now, not all the vocals, but everybody gets a turn here, which is weird because Journey was never a vocal democracy. It was Steve Perry. In the old days, it was Craig Raleigh and Steve Perry. But, you know, you kind of knew who was going to be singing these songs. So that was bizarre, right? The record label, you know, goes belly up. Steve Perry's probably thinking they shouldn't have cracked the stone. Hence, did Steve Perry put a curse on this band, right? Just think of all these things that went wrong. So yeah, they lost the record label, and then they lose Steve Augeri. Steve Augeri's voice goes out. Boom. In fact, I have a theory that they had all these other singers on Generations, or was it Generation or Generations? I always mess this up, like Frontiers. I know it was Frontiers and not Frontier. Anyway, they had all these singers, and Augeri's voice cuts out. My theory is a lot of people were singing on Generations because maybe Steve Augeri couldn't sing at that point or was having difficulty singing. So they go out on tour. His voice is toast, and they have to bring in Jeff Scott Soto. Now you're thinking, okay, this is a good part of the story. They bring Jeff in as the singer, right? Well, Jeff thinks he's hired. He's in this band for 11 months. He had been working with Neil Schon prior to that, and he seemed like a really good replacement, except he didn't have that traditional Steve Perry, Steve Augeri sound. He was a baritone. He was a tenor. He was everything in between because he's Jeff Scott Soto. He's got this amazing vocal range. Jeff thought he was hired. The band put it on their website. Welcome, Jeff Scott Soto, new lead singer of Journey. The curse kicks in again. Soto finds out that he's not in Journey anymore, and Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon is the guy that tells him he's no longer in Journey. Word travels fast in the industry, and rather than telling Soto, this is how he found out. The curse hits again. He's in the band for 11 months. Recently, it's been said that, hey, Jeff wasn't really a good fit for us, even though we announced him as the new singer. Huh? More chaos, more confusion. Cracking the stone, the curse. Steve Perry sitting back and probably laughing at all this while he's attending, Giants games or whatever at the time. So then they do hire Arnel Pineda. Now, initially, that's really successful. They bring the band back from the brink of disaster. They've got this great, talented Filipino singer who they found in a Philippines dive bar, a dive bar in the Philippines. And, he's got videos on YouTube. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure you know the story of Arnel Pineda. It's a great story. And the curse isn't about Arnel. The curse is still Steve Perry, who, again, is still kind of in the mix. There's a cloud that hangs over this band. Now, they record Revelation. That does really well. And they go out and they tour, and that's great for a while. There's even a little documentary about how Arnel is making this band better. And you would think things are going to go well now. They've kind of righted the ship, and they've got this singer. Well, the band puts out another album with Arnel on lead vocals. By the way, they put out the album, the first album with Arnel, kind of on their own record label, and it did pretty well. I'm not sure where all that money went. I don't know who got that money. It's interesting with all the things that are going on now, how they figured that out. Steve Perry, of course, when the stone got cracked, ended up getting one of the most lucrative deals in the history of band breakups. So Perry, through all of this, laughing his way to the bank. So they put out another album on a new record label, Frontiers, by the way, which, again, if you like Frontiers, you should check out Sunstorm. But Journey put out an album called Eclipse, and Eclipse kind of bombed. It was a little bit too experimental. There wasn't a whole lot of promotion that went on for it, and distribution, it seemed, was almost, I don't know, just wasn't there. But this was not an album that really sounded like vintage Journey. The critics kind of liked it. And when the critics kind of like Journey music, that sort of means that the general population isn't going to get it. The population at large, I think, really liked Arnel on Revelation, but by the time we get to Eclipse in 2011, the mojo is gone. So the band doesn't record any new music for 11 years. They're touring off and on. There's something that happens during that time period, and they have to bring Steve Smith back into the band. Okay, Steve Smith wasn't too happy in 1997 when Steve Perry was missing in action. And he had left his band, was it Vital Information, I think they were called. He was doing pretty well with them. And he left, and he rejoined Journey. And here he is rejoining Journey again. The curse returns. Why do we have to have personnel changes? You may say, well, that didn't happen because of the curse, but here are all these different things that continue to happen to this band. They had a solid lineup. They had to break up that lineup. And then they had to try again with this new lineup, which was kind of similar again to the Escape lineup. Ross Valerie is still in the band. Steve Smith is back. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's kind of like Escape with Arnel on lead vocals, so it wasn't bad. Except for the fact that I don't think Steve Smith was all that happy being back in Journey. And I've been told that by several people who were kind of close to the situation. Now we fast forward a little bit, right? And then it's, 2017, and we've got this White House thing that happens, and all hell breaks loose, and social media is such a big thing, and the social media is feeding the Steve Perry curse. Neil Sean is going off. He's going off on John Kane. He even went off on me at one point, said I was the not-so-real music observer. It's true. Great memories for me. That's when I was doing the videos in the backyard, and CNN grabbed a little clip from one of my videos where I said, is this band going to survive? Actually, I'm not even sure what I said, but it was one of those passionate pleas into the camera that was hanging from the branch in the tree. It's vintage me. I don't even know if that video is still up. It might be. But it was when this channel was kind of new, and I was getting lots of views because I was basically channeling all of the energy of the Journey fans who are wondering, is this the end of Journey? The curse continues, right? So they kind of right that ship a little bit. Things smooth out to some degree, but then we go down a little bit further. Here we are in the year 2022. Now, before that even happens, you've got this new lineup, this new rhythm section that's announced. You've got Narada Michael Walden, and you've got Randy Jackson. They never really play all that long with Journey. Randy mysteriously leaves. It was said that he may have had some issues, physical issues, like with his back or his legs. Something went wrong. But people were kind of excited to see Randy Jackson, who played bass for Journey back in the 80s. By the way, when Steve Perry hired him, Randy came back to Journey. So that was kind of cool. And Narada Michael Walden. Well, they didn't last very long in Journey. This was supposed to be the new Freedom lineup. And yeah, they played some gigs, but not long after that, Narada was gone. Dean Castronova was back in the band, which was awesome. What else happened? We know that Randy, I don't think, ever played any live gigs. Marco Mendoza was brought back into the band, or maybe for the first time. I'm thinking Marco may have been a replacement at one point for somebody. Ross Valerie was out, by the way, and Steve Smith were out because of the coup. I forgot all about the coup. And Steve Perry was supposedly on the phone call during the coup. You don't think the curse of Steve Perry is a real thing? So anyway, the coup fails, according to Neil and maybe John. I'm not sure. And the band continues, and Steve and Ross basically settle with these guys out of court, and they're content. They wanted a little golden parachute for all of the stuff they've been put through, and maybe because of the curse, maybe it hurt them psychologically over time. Steve Smith being fired from the band by Steve Perry and then coming back to the band and not really wanting to be there, almost feeling like maybe I'm being used. You know, it looks good on the lineup to see my name up there. People remember me, but do I really want to be here? So anyway, we get to 2020, 21, 22, and then you have this thing-demic that happens, right? Now, again, is that the curse of Steve Perry? Probably not, but Journey is a touring machine. In order for them to make money, just like all of these bands, they need to be out there on the road, and they can't. They can't tour. So they record, and they put out this album called Freedom, their first album in 11 years. Holy crap, Batman. People are going to be really interested in Freedom. I mean, this is the band with the most downloaded song, the most karaokeed song in the history of everything. And crickets. Radio doesn't embrace it. You know, and then, of course, you've got this other issue with the fan base, which is divided. And they've been divided for over a decade when it comes to Arnell versus Steve. And people continue to dump on Arnell because he's not Steve, right? And nobody here is going to argue that Arnell is better than Steve. In fact, that's part of the curse. The cloud hangs over Arnell. He can't get out from underneath that cloud. And it's hard for him to deal with that, I'm sure, on a daily basis. And his voice at times has been shredded by this catalog. And there are rumors that Arnell's being auto-tuned, or Arnell somehow sounds better, but it's not because he's singing better. It's for some other reason. I saw Journey last year and I thought Arnell sounded great. But then someone told me later that I was hearing things, and the things weren't coming from Arnell. Now, again, I don't know for sure if that's true or not, but again, the curse continues. You know, can you replace Steve Perry with anybody? That's the big problem. No matter how hard over the years the band tried to replace Steve Perry, Jerry's voice goes out. Soto mysteriously fired. Arnell causing division within the ranks, and then having difficulty singing at times, and people unnecessarily making his life, you know, not a nightmare, but maybe fairly difficult. I've seen a few dust ups here and there on Twitter where people say really cruel things all the time. But Arnell's like, hey, they hired me. I came over here. I did what they asked me to do, but yet I can't get out from underneath the curse of Steve Perry. So here we are in 2022. Freedom gets released and crickets. Nobody really cares. The album has some kind of weird production issue with it. The material is fairly good and somewhat derivative, and the band gets, again, critiqued for being derivative of themselves. I defend that, but again, it causes more issues for the band. They're not selling albums, but they are touring, and they're doing okay out on the road. But they're not, again, doing anything unique, nothing that they haven't really done for the past decade or so. For diehard Journey fans, they're just happy to see the band out there on tour. Now, we've got the White House issue in 2017. We've got the photography issue that happened. You've got the Aretha Franklin thing. And you'll have to Google all of these. And then you've got Neil Schon on Twitter, and just, you know, when he's not in the best of moods, he gets a little irritated at managers. They fire Azoff and company. They try to manage things themselves, and it doesn't go well. And the fighting begins, and then there are all kinds of allegations about who's doing what with the credit card. And I know I'm missing a few things here because now the curse is coming fast and furious. Steve Perry, again, the guy who was supposedly on the call where they have this meeting where they say, basically they want to get rid of Neil Schon and they want to take over the band. It was Neil Schon and it was everybody else, including Steve Perry and the late Herbie Herbert, who is still around. By the way, that might be part of the curse too, because Steve Perry said goodbye to Herbie, so Steve was taking even more control. Steve was the guy who hired Azoff to begin with. Steve wanted to bring Azoff in because he was the best. He was the guy who brought the Eagles back to life. And I'm thinking he probably thought, hey, we need somebody new and we need somebody good. And Azoff, for better or worse, he's the best, right? Come on, you can't really argue with that. You may not like the guy's business practices, but all of this, you know, change and confusion and nothing is constant. I mean, Journey isn't Aerosmith. You know what I mean? Aerosmith had the same lineup forever. I think they had the same manager for a very long time. And even though those guys fought like cats and dogs, they kept things together. You know, where Journey continues to unravel, and most of that unraveling occurred a little bit when Steve left the first time, because there's no real coming back from that, but especially even more intense after Steve Perry leaves the second time. So here we are, almost in 2023, and you've got basically blood on the floor now. There's no question about it. Kane and Sean are going back and forth, blaming each other, talking really negatively in a way which, again, I was saying, look, maybe they will figure out a way to tour next year because the tickets are selling. But now I'm getting close to the point where I'm thinking maybe it won't happen. And that drama may just be the end. You know, if they have a contract, though, they have to fulfill that contract. And so my guess is they're going to have to find a way to get on stage. Now, add another part of this curse. Here's the other part. The songs that Perry and Sean and Cain wrote together are now being divided up, where Hypnosis owns 2/3 of it and Perry owns 1/3. And Hypnosis cares about branding. They care about image, as does Steve Perry. So now you've got controlling entities, Perry and Hypnosis, who are probably both saying in unison, hey guys, knock it off. Cain today, if you noticed, said that the brand is being hurt. And I'm sure Perry feels the same way, and I'm sure Hypnosis feels the same way. And I don't know what the truth is between Sean and Cain. I don't know who's right and who's wrong completely in this. Each day I kind of change my mind a little bit. Someone issues a statement, and this is just really good PR. This is like, okay, I'm going to put out a statement. I'm going to have someone write that statement for me. I think Jonathan Cain had someone write his first statement, and I'm thinking the second statement sounded more like that was from him. He also accuses Neil Sean of being kind of mean to fans over on Twitter when they disagree with Neil Sean. So, wow, the curse, the cloud, the curse, it's bigger and heavier and shows no signs of stopping anytime soon as we go into 2023. Steve Perry and the trademarks, don't forget about that. Cain said that, hey, it was Neil. Neil was the one that tried to rip Steve Perry off with the trademarks, when initially it was said that Cain and Sean decided to file those trademarks. I guess the only way to know for sure is to talk to Steve Perry's attorney and find out who actually filed the trademarks. Things are getting just hard to follow, very complicated, and it feels very unlike that band I went to see in 1981. And it has for a long, long time. Now I'm getting all nostalgic here because, again, there was no curse in 1981. There are 5 guys on stage blowing the roof off the Cape Cod Coliseum, and the walls were sweating, okay, because it's so hot in there, or it was back in those days, because it was one of the worst places to go see a concert, but nobody cared. This was Journey at full strength. What we have now is an older band that has lost much of what made them great to begin with. But what's even more depressing is there's no unity, there's no chemistry, and it appears that this is all about money. And when Steve Perry said, hey, don't crack the stone, I think he meant more than just the money part of things. Steve Perry got a very lucrative deal when that stone got cracked. But here we are 20 years later, 22 years later, and Journey is still not even close to being the band they once were. And anybody who comes along and says, hey, they're better than, no, they're not better than ever. I mean, they could be a very good band, and they still put on fairly good performances. They have good musicians on stage. Todd Jensen, by the way, now is their bass player. I forgot to mention that. Marco left and Todd's there for whatever reason. We didn't get a clear explanation as to what happened to Marco. Just the curse, right? Just the curse. I was told Marco just didn't work out. Okay, fair enough. Marco didn't work out. Why didn't Marco work out? You know, you've got other things happening behind the scenes. It's good to see Dean back. I'm sure Dean likes being there. And I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but maybe he knows that this is all cursed and he's just trying to ride things out until it finally stops. I'm thinking, folks, that what Journey ought to do, it would end the curse, and it would put everything out of its misery, because it needs to be put out of its misery at some point. And the band has done everything it needs to do musically, but it probably should call it a career for this band at the end of 2023. If they do a first leg of this tour, great. If they get through it, it'll be a miracle. If they do a second leg of this tour, and that's what I've been hearing, that they want to do a Journey only, kind of an evening with Journey kind of thing. Maybe they bring in the orchestra. Maybe Greg Raleigh shows up. I'm not sure if Greg wants to be a part of this. And that's another part of this curse, in a way. You know, Steve Perry shows up and Greg Raleigh wants to hit the road in a few years. Like 3 years later, Greg's like, I'm out. I mean, I don't know if that's the beginning of the curse. I think the curse was really placed when Steve Perry said, don't crack the stone. You know, look, I'm just trying to have a little fun with this, but there are a lot of weird things. And I'm sure people can fill in some of the blanks that I forgot about, because there's so much. The sudden death of Herbie Herbert. Okay, that was kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe it was just Herbie's time, right? The fact that Ross Valerie, who was a founding member of this band, is no longer in this band, and what happened to him at the end raises some bizarre questions. But again, the greed and I guess this constant focus of wanting to be in the news, right? Or to make a point about someone or something in this social media age has really fueled this so-called curse, with Steve Perry's legacy and the cloud that will always hang over this band. This isn't Arnell's fault. It's not Dean's fault. It's not Jeff Scott Soto's fault. It's not Steve Augeri's fault. It's just what it is. So in any event, I hope you found that somewhat entertaining. I don't know if curses are real, but if a curse is real, this is probably one of them right now. And I hope these guys somehow put it back together again, but it doesn't look good. Looks like a lost cause, but we'll see. Maybe they'll tour next year. Maybe there'll be a miracle and the curse will be broken. Here's my theory. The only way to break this curse is for Steve Perry to walk on stage with that band again. That's my theory. If he walks on stage and performs with Journey, even if Steve can't sing, even if he's off key, even if they tune everything down a full step for Steve Perry, guaranteed the curse will disappear if he returns to the stage, even just one time. Because that's like Steve giving his blessing to everything. I don't know. I don't see it happening, but next year is the 50th anniversary. You'd have to mend a lot of fences really fast, and you'd have to have an intervention, a legal intervention by a number of people to make it actually happen. So we shall see. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. One more time for Sunstorm, right there, Brothers in Arms and the curse, Steve Perry. He's not a curse, but I think he put a curse on this. Street Talk, fantastic album. The extended version with all those hidden or missing tracks, definitely worth buying if you don't have a copy. And of course, I will see you all very soon.